Hey guys, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Mark Daniels Jr. I'm out here on the lake today, but I want to talk to you guys about Cherokee Lake. I just wrapped that tournament up in Dangerous, Tennessee. I want to walk you guys through how I caught them, what I did, and how it all broke down. First of all, it was extremely tough practice for me. Temperatures were really cold. It was snowing the first day of the tournament. A lot of adversity to deal with, but you know, I got my good base layer going, stayed warm, bundled up really good, and got after them. A lot of people were fishing deep, targeting school and smallmouth on a lot of offshore structure. You know, I really tried to make that work for me in the tournament, but I just could not get it to go. So what I ended up doing is getting down and doing what I know how to do. Fishing in the German Creek, Ray Creek area, finding some off-colored water, covering a lot of water with moving baits, primarily cranking. And so I'm gonna walk you guys through the crankbaits that I chose to use this week and how I caught my fish. This guy right here is what I caught my big bass at the tournament on day one, and several other key fish that I did weigh throughout the week. And this is a Norman 9 to 12. And if you guys take a good look at that, I mean, this bait is thrashed. I was banging this thing off of every single rock that I could. Several keepers were caught on this, including that big bass. The setup for this, which is very key, I was using 10-pound, and I said that right, 10-pound Seaguar Abrazex. I knew I was going to be fishing a lot of rocks, so I opted to use the Abrazex. It has a lot more, hence the word Abrazex, abrasion resistance. And so when I'm down there and this crankbait's rooting around in those rocks and it's beating and it's banging, I'm not in fear of breakoffs. The reason I chose 10-pound line as opposed to 15, 20, 17, you know, whatever your preference may be, I opted to go with the 10 because I knew the 10-pound line would get me maximum depth of this bait and maximum action, which is very key when you're fishing cold water. Water temps were hovering around 43 to 45 degrees for me in the back of that creek, and I knew I needed to get the most action out of this bait that I could. Throwing this on a cranking stick, graphite composite, very key when you're fishing treble hook baits. And then also fishing on a Cabela's Arachnid reel. This one is a 6:3-to-1 gear ratio. I really like this gear ratio for throwing crankbaits in cold water situations. It's very key. Has the T-wing system engineered by Daiwa, just like some of their reels. Extremely well to cast. And it has this cool little mag on the side right here, which allows me to really get dialed in as the wind blows and changes. I can really dial my reel in so I'm not backlashing. In the mornings when it was kind of calm and slick, for whatever reason, they didn't want that big wobble that the Norman 9 to 12 was giving off. So I started switching things up a little bit. And what I opted to go to was a Rapala bait. And this one's a DT6. And I was using two different colors. This one I think is called Crawfish. So you guys need to look at that. I believe that one's called Crawfish, but I was also switching it up to another color that they call Demon Craw. And that's more of a brighter red. Now this bait has a much tighter wiggle and it doesn't have any rattles in it. It's a balsa wood bait. It stays real tight. Again, tight wiggles and wobbles in cold water situations are generally what you're going to want to throw. You don't want to throw your big square bill baits that are going to be wobbling really hard. They don't tend to get as many bites. So keep that in mind when you're fishing cold water. A tight wiggling bait will always get more bites than a wide wiggling bait in cold water. So this dude right here did a lot of damage. A lot of key keepers came on the DT6 in these two colors. Again, 10-pound Abrazex line, still banging rocks. It was all about the rocks last week. And I'm using a 7'2" medium heavy graphite composite rod. Another key thing to note, the fish weren't really choking the bait. They weren't eating it really hard. So what I was doing is I was switching out all of my hooks. So when fish aren't eating the bait really good, I like to switch my hooks out to Gamakatsu round bends. And the reason being is it's a much lighter wire hook, faster penetration on the hook with less effort. And once that fish touches that bait, whether he's eating it or he slaps it, I caught one 3-pound smallmouth in the tail, reeled it completely in backwards. It goes to show you how effective the light wire Gamakatsu hook is, and that's exactly why I switched them out. Had I had another style of hook on there, the likelihood is I would have missed that fish and probably a lot of other bites that I got that week. Moving along to last but certainly not least is the tried and true original Bill Lewis rattle trap. I weighed in 3 of my key bass last week on this bait in Rayburn Red, and this particular one is a knocking trap. You can hear the different sound, very low tone, has one big buckshot in here as opposed to your original trap, and the fish were really liking it, man. I had some other boats in the area. I'm not really sure what they were throwing, but there were several other pros fishing that same area, and I figured if they were going to be throwing any kind of other lipless bait, the likelihood is it would have all the BBs in there. So I immediately tied on the knocking trap to try to give them a different sound, and right off the bat it started working for me. I did catch a couple fish on the original rattle trap and the chrome and black back, another tried and true color by Bill Lewis, but I didn't catch many on it. I did catch a few, but not many. But this guy right here was the deal. Again, graphite composite rod. I'm changing the hooks out on these, light wire. Fish were having the bait top of the head, side of the head, back fin, all over the body. But with that light hot wire hook, you're gonna land some of those bass, as with other hooks you wouldn't even hit opportunity. So 10-pound line again, Seaguar Brazex. It was all about the rocks. Anything you threw, whether it was the trap, whether it was the DT6, or whether it was the Norman 9-12, you needed to be banging into rocks in order to get bit. And so that was the key. Cabela's Arachnid Reel, 6:3-to-1 gear ratio, which is a perfect ratio for cranking in my opinion, because it's not too fast, it's not too slow. When I'm cranking, I have a likelihood to overfish the bait. I'm wanting to go, go, go. So if you're throwing a 7-to-1 or you're throwing an 8-to-1 in some cases, you're gonna fish that bait too fast and you're gonna miss out on some key bites. So I just took it a step backwards, slowed it down just a little bit, went with the 6:3-to-1 and got some key bites doing that. So it was all about reaction for me this week. I didn't do a lot of the deep water smallmouth stuff. I tried it every single day in the tournament. It just wasn't working for me. So I stuck with my guns, pulled out a 40th place finish in my first Elite Series event. Had big bass on day 1, so I'm stoked about that. And I'm looking forward to getting down here to Okeechobee. One last key thing that I'll note in the areas that I was fishing, what the fish were really keying on. It was all about transition banks. So what a transition bank is when you can visually see up on the land, it might be pea gravel rock and all of a sudden it changes into big chunky rock, or it might be a flat mud bank, and next thing you know you start seeing that flatter shell type rock on the bank. Those are transitions, and when you can visually see that, it looks just like that underwater. So I was really keen on those transition points. That's very textbook bass fishing 101, and it held true for this past week. Every time I would get to that transition, I'd throw that crankbait up there and I'd come off that transition and boom, I'd get bit. And it was very key, and it allowed me to run around without having to work too hard and visually see where I wanted to fish and in areas that I wanted to check out. Even if I hadn't fished there in practice, I could visually see that it had potential and just roll up and fish it, and oftentimes get bit. So I appreciate you guys for following me, checking out my recap. This has been a heck of a tournament, a great experience for me fishing on the Elite Series. I'm having a blast, and like I said, I'm looking forward to getting down to Okeechobee, pulling out some big rods, some missile baits, and getting after them. And I'll check in with you guys when I get back from there. Take care.